Hey everybody, it's your boy, and some of you may have already come to this conclusion anyway because maybe you've observed the same thing that I have done, and that is that the world is largely against freedom, largely against anything that's vaguely libertarian, anything even classically liberal, anything that is to do with liberty. Obviously, not every single person, because libertarians, liberals, etc. exist in the world, people who love liberty, and these are the people who day in, day out fight for that liberty. However, the rest of the world doesn't care for liberty, they don't care for freedom, and that is, of course, something that is multifaceted and has many different reasons. This realisation that most people don't care for it, that we must take on board and realise that this is the reality of the situation we find ourselves in the world. And bear in mind that this is something that has pretty much always been the case in humanity. There's never been a time where most people have been in favour of the most libertarian society, that have been in favour of the most anarchistic society. It doesn't always have to be like that all the time. There has been, of course, in history, areas of the world where most people believe in it, even if it is just fleeting. And there's no reason why we can't create a society in the world, or at least create conditions in the world, where there are less people against freedom, less people scared of it even, where perhaps a fully libertarian country, or even a place where there is no countries, can be tolerated and be left alone. But the people who are ANCAPs, the people who are libertarians, minarchists, classical liberals, the fact remains is that they have a lot of work to do in order to convince people that their ideology is the way to go about, and not all these ideologies that are collectivists and claim to want to protect them and support them and look after them, when of course we know that it's the complete opposite. They will only lead to famine, death and destruction. But why is it that the world is so hostile to liberty? Why are they so hostile to freedom? Well, for most people, it's not that they're authoritarian. Most people are not evil, although we all have something like that within ourselves because it's only human nature. We all want, to some extent, some kind of freedom, but we also want some kind of control, and we want to exert both of those things at the same time, and some of us want to exert more authoritarian tendencies than others, and some of us want to exert more freedom than others. But the vast majority of people are, to use a cliche, somewhere in the middle, although they veer more towards wanting safety and therefore go towards authoritarianism. These are the people who, let's just say, are the NPCs, not particularly bright. They could be midwits, they could be the average person who isn't particularly smart, but they all fear for their lives, they fear for their children's lives, and they will usually be the first people who will be turned by authoritarian ideologies, claim to have their best interests at heart, who claim to have their safety at heart. If they just exchange that freedom, if they exchange just a little bit of freedom, they will look after them, they will solve this problem that's causing them huge issues. It could be a lack of food, it could be a lack of money, it could be anything, could be any kind of threat, could be an outside threat from another country for all we know. And these are the people that I think it was Thomas Jefferson talked about. Those who sacrificed freedom and liberty for a little bit of security deserve neither. And unfortunately for him and for the rest of us, these are the majority of people, and these are the majority of people who you have to work towards getting consent from to govern. Now, you also have to convince them that more freedom is actually safer than having less freedom. These are the people that will form mobs, who will form riots when anything bad happens, demanding change, usually demanding more control, more assertive efforts from the state, from their leaders. You can just think of the people in Italy and Germany during their turbulent times in the 20th century. They're the types of people who voted for the communists, the fascists, and of course the Nazis, because they saw what was going on in their society and how bad it was and how the economy was going down the drain. And rather than go for the people who could have sorted it out without having to sacrifice any freedom, they went for those who had obviously the better propaganda, the ones who had taught the better game, and they voted in droves for the communists, the Nazis, and the fascists. And also, let's be honest, a lot of them are apathetic as well. There are some people amongst the average mass who do care about politics, but most of them are completely apathetic and don't care whether or not a state becomes too totalitarian or becomes ever more libertarian. They don't care as long as they are left alone. But of course, there's always a risk that they will not be left alone. But because these people are such a non-threat anyway, they do tend to be somewhat left alone, or at least they perceive themselves to be left alone when they're not really, and then react when you say, well, look, taxation is theft because you weren't asked to do your taxes, and they'll say, well, no, we have a social contract, or, oh, I don't care. I just pay it and I don't go to jail and everything's fine. What's the issue? Look what it pays for. The roads and stuff like that. And it's mostly those people that you have to convince that your way is the correct way. Then, of course, we have the rest of them, the ones who are knowingly advocating for totalitarian, anti-liberal, anti-freedom practices and ideologies. And those people, well, they simply have to be fought and defeated, physically removed, as Hans Hermann Hoppe would say, whether that be through war, whether that be through peaceful means at the ballot box. So be it. These people have to be fought and they must be defeated, and the masses must be convinced that these people are no good and will not have their best interests at heart. That has been done in the past and it can be done again, but it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of time because they, as I have said before, have a head start when it comes to engaging with these people's minds and winning them over, because they don't have to rely on logic, in order to put their points across like we do. They just need to rely on emotional arguments because it does appeal to these primal instincts to protect the herd. So you have to somehow find a way for your ideologies to appeal to that lizard brain element of the mass and hope for the best. But then there's the other issue. How do we fight this fear of freedom? That is something that is philosophically and politically very difficult to deal with, because there seems to be amongst most people a fear of freedom. Now, my personal opinion is that if you want to get to a place that's, say, for example, a classical liberal society, or hell, dare I say even an anarcho-capitalist society, you don't go and rip off the band-aid. Now, it has worked in some places in the world, ripping off the band-aid. It did work for some countries post the Soviet collapse, but it didn't work for all of them. It may have worked for Poland, it may have worked for Romania, it didn't work for Hungary. And as you can see, whereas the former two countries are by and large open to capitalism, Hungary isn't, and that's why Orban keeps getting elected. Not only does he have the nationalist side of things, but economically he's no better than the communists that he got rid of. And that's because when the band-aid was ripped, the Hungarian people, rather than blame bad government policies, they blamed the free market. But you see the point I'm trying to make. They'd rather blame having more freedom than the real problem, which is the state intervening when they shouldn't. And I personally think that we should wean people off totalitarianism and authoritarianism and try to cultivate, whether that be skills or just a mindset that, look, you can do this, you can survive without state control of the means of production, state control of healthcare, state control of this, that and the other. You can do all this and it can be affordable and it can be safe and you will be fine. But it has to be done through baby steps for most of the world, because they've been so enmeshed in this for so long that most people don't know any better. And if we were to rip the band-aid off, say in Britain, for example, I really do believe that people would, rather than blame the state, blame the so-called free market experiment, like I've seen certain Tory MPs say about Liz Truss, even though she isn't free market at all. Slowly but surely, these people must be weaned off, like an alcoholic or a drug addict must be slowly weaned off drugs. Sure, we could go cold turkey and it could work, but it's a 50-50 chance. But weaning people off these ideas will go a long way towards making them more receptive and more open and friendly, or at the very least tolerant of our ideas and of societies that are based on our ideas. Because, look, I would love if Afghanistan became a reality and it was left alone by the rest of the world. Say America became one big anarchist melting pot. But there is no reason why, for example, that China or Russia or any other country that is powerful enough to mount an invasion and conquer some communes wouldn't do that. Of course they would. If there's no state protecting these people, in their opinion, why not go there? It's all just a mishmash of different people. They're not one country anymore. They're different groups of people homesteading. But if these countries were a bit more liberal in their opinions, they'd be less likely to attack you, maybe. It's kind of the same logic that a lot of neoliberals say. You might have seen this in some geopolitics lessons, that democracies don't tend to fight each other. They tend to fight other political systems. Maybe the same is true of more libertarian/liberal societies are less likely to fight other liberal/libertarian societies, and are more likely to fight with authoritarian/totalitarian ones for obvious reasons. Now, I don't want you all to feel black-pilled about this. I don't want you to feel as if there's no hope. America, Britain, and other societies throughout the world in history have actually been more liberal, more libertarian, and the people that lived in these societies obviously felt very hard and strong about these principles, and there's no reason why we can't have societies like that again. So essentially, these societies can be created again. People can be convinced and to believe in these ideas, but again, it takes time and effort. And that means throughout the good and the bad, you cannot falter. But you also have to be realistic and acknowledge that most people either don't care or are hostile to your ideas, and it's going to take some convincing for some of them. And it may mean that they may have to become victims of themselves or other people in order to finally see the error of their ways. And we've seen that so many times, haven't we? But anyway, I think I'll leave it there. It's been your boy, and I'll see you all later.